About 16 years ago from now, I had a slight episode of depression, which was treated basically with mild antidepressants over about 2-3 months, and then things seemed to settle down. Then, totally out of the blue, I became ill again. One day I was serving a customer from that side of the bar. The next night he was actually serving me medication from the other side of a counter in hospital. I was sent through to Nine Wells to see Professor through there, and after various consultations it was suggested that I might actually be a candidate for neurosurgery. Another university had put together a cocktail of antidepressants and nicknamed it rocket fuel, and it was suggested as a last-ditch attempt I'd like to give that a try, which I did, and that was the start of things progressing.
I was bullied when I was 10 and subsequently became very, very withdrawn. As it went into my teens, it gradually got worse. When I was 19, I was referred to clinical psychology. I didn't get a lot out of it, I think probably because I wasn't ready for it at the time. As things went on, they didn't really get any better. I didn't want to acknowledge that there was a problem until I didn't really have much choice but to acknowledge that there was a problem after I split up with my husband when I was 25. I became very, very ill very, very quickly. Eventually I went to the doctors and said, you know, I'm losing loads of weight, and it's not because I'm not eating, even though I was eating like a banana a week. And he did various tests and he was like, well, there's nothing physically wrong with you. At which point I broke down in the surgery and I was like, oh my God, all I know what it is then, I'm mad. And I started to get treated for depression. I was referred on to psychiatry, to psychiatric services in Dundee, and was diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder, and I have what they call bipolar 2.
I was actually so ill that, you know, I don't really have much recollection of actually going into hospital.
When I first knew Lorraine was really in a very deep depression, requiring admission to hospital. But there was always that element that there was hope there.
Once I'd recovered sufficiently to take in my surroundings, I would say that the main point I want to bring across is that there was just a total lack of stimulation on the ward.
She just had the potential there. You just knew that there was so much more that she had to give, and she just wasn't at that moment in time able to do that, and it was not giving up on her.
There should be, at certain stages of your recovery, some arts therapists coming into the ward space, whether to do music, drama, dance, visual arts, yoga. Just something to take yourself out of yourself and try and express some of the emotions that you're feeling inside, because it is really like going through the spin cycle of a washing machine when you're in hospital.
After coming out of hospital 2 years ago, when I felt a bit low, if my husband was working in the pub here, I would come down. One day he said, oh, there's only one person through in the bar, you know who it is, why don't you come through? So I did, and got chatting away, and it made it so much easier. One night there was a game of dominoes going on and they needed a third person to join in. And many years ago, I used to play in the domino team for here. So it was suggested I take part, which I did. And my concentration wasn't fantastic then. I couldn't even sit and watch half-hour episode of EastEnders or anything. But I thought, well, I'll have a go. And it was amazing how just something silly like that built up your concentration, because you didn't want to let your partner down. So it got to the stage that I was coming down maybe a couple of times a week just to play dominoes. And then just gradually, David would say, oh, can you pour a pint for me, or can you get this for me? And then it just gradually built up from there.
I've been extraordinarily lucky in that I've had continuity of care with my psychiatrist for 6 years. So that means that he knows me very, very well. He knows my partner well. He knows what support network I've got. And that means that he's been willing to allow me to take sort of risks to a certain extent. You know, there's maybe been times when I've been unwell enough to be admitted, but because he knows I've got a good support network, and because he knows that, you know, my partner will work with me, my parents will work with me in terms of like making sure I've got my medication and all that kinds of things, I've stayed in the community. And as a result, despite the fact of having the diagnosis of bipolar 2, I've never had an admission to hospital.
I feel I promote recovery by developing relationships with the people that I see, valuing their experience and recognising their strengths and capabilities, also taking into account their hopes and their wishes for the future, and seeing them as much more than a collection of symptoms or a diagnosis, but as a person with their own rights.
A lot of people, they see you as an illness, they've got preset, the medical staff have got preset ideas of what helps everybody generally. They don't necessarily take the time to get to know you.
I think the immediate disadvantage that all health professionals face is that they only come to know you when you're severely unwell. So they don't know what your norm is, they don't know what they're aiming for.
It's seeing each person as an individual and working with that individual to see what it is that they are, what they want to do.
Just to be treated with respect and for somebody to listen to you and that what you were saying was believable. All these things are maybe sound small, but all these things matter.
It's very important for us to recognise what it is that people want, what their wishes and hopes are for the future, their dreams and aspirations. And if we can recognise what their strengths and capabilities are and focus on that, then we're helping them on their way to recovery.
Well, I was fortunate both last year and this year in my hospital stay to be allowed to come and participate in the Walled Garden project, which is a therapeutic project for people recovering from mental illness. And I found that 6 days out of the 7 I was along here off the ward and into, you know, this very supportive environment. It's almost like an extended family. You know, you're made very welcome, you're made to feel valued, you contribute something every day, and it gives you a purpose and a focus back in life.
We give people a safe place to come. They work at their own pace. We keep it as relatively stress-free as possible, and it allows people to grow like a garden.
To give people the choice of whatever it is they want to access. It may be leisure opportunities, it may be volunteering opportunities, employment-based projects. And if we have a wide range of opportunities available to us, then we can offer that to the people that we meet with.
There is maybe a tendency from the medical profession to underestimate the usefulness of a therapeutic relationship. If there isn't the trust with somebody, then I know for myself I would be less likely to tell this doctor as to what was actually going on, because I have that, there's no barriers. I just tell him exactly how things are, and I trust him enough to know that he's not going to immediately just rush me off up to hospital.
I've had tremendous support from my community nurse, Ruth. You know, she's coming out to visit me in my house, and she's given me a lot of, you know, encouragement in what I'm doing, a lot of support. You know, she said that during my illness she never gave up hope in me, which is great, because I'd given up hope in myself. Also, Leslie at the Walled Garden here, my support worker, when I actually was discharged from hospital, I had no income at all. And, you know, she sat me down and we filled out forms, benefit forms. And, you know, I think at that stage I was still very vulnerable. And if it had been left to my own devices to have to fill in these forms, I wouldn't have coped with it.
Lorraine had been on the project for about a month or so when I realised that she was actually attending less. She'd committed to 3 days a week, and she was now very hit and miss, and some weeks not attending at all. Coming from my background as a nurse, alarm bells were ringing because I was thinking, oh, is Lorraine becoming unwell here? And we had a long talk about it. And it was a learning curve for me because I had to take off my nurse's hat and look at Lorraine as an individual. And this is Lorraine's personality.
We sit on a daily basis and listen to our patients' stories, and it's not until I've actually been through that experience of actually having to share my story with people that I've realised just how difficult that can sometimes be and how overwhelming it actually is.
I think there is increasing recognition that from the psychiatrist's point of view, it's more than just symptoms, and it's more than just, well, the symptoms have got better and therefore job done. There's a recognition and there's evidence that even when the symptoms are better, people can still have problems, and that recovery is different from something was this bad and now it's less bad.
I was a trained nurse and responsibilities, and my idea of recovery is not going back to the way I was, because possibly that was part of the reason I became unwell. But having a quality of life where I feel useful again.
When I was trained as a mental health officer, I was told schizophrenia is a lifelong illness, it's enduring, people never get better. And I don't accept that now. And I wouldn't teach people that now when I'm training them. I'd say, no, you have to look at how does a person recover, not how are they maintained through ill health or disability because of a mental illness. How do you help them recover to be the best person they can and to live the best life they can?
From an age of about 14, 15, I wanted to do something in mental health, even before my own issues became really, really big. So I just kept scanning the paper and sort of found out what it would take to get into that kind of thing, and appreciating that through my own experiences I'd learned a lot of skills.
Yeah, well, it started off making handmade cards to sell in the craft shop here at the Old Garden. But the project manager, Chris Good, suggested to me that if I made cards in my own time using my own materials, that they could sell them for me. And it gave me the idea that I could maybe take that further and approach shops and galleries in Perth and Dunkeld. And I now have about 150 cards out on display. And it's made me realise that I can produce work that will sell, which has really increased my self-esteem.
I now work up at Perth Association for Mental Health, where I'm a support worker, and I support people with mental health problems on the road to recovery. I just love doing creative things, and it's helped me to express that in very visual terms. It's been like a creative outburst almost, so it's like a firework display since I've been discharged from hospital.
I'm working full-time. I'm totally off all benefits. Still got quite a good social life. For my sins, we've just bought another pub. That's my venture, so I've now got to stay well.
To me, it's so important to get the message across that people with mental health problems can do. It's not about what they can't do, and I keep saying this, but it's just something I really strongly believe in, and I just don't believe in writing people off.
People have said what has helped your recovery, and it's lots of different things. But I think I'm sort of saying that basically, now that I've found myself through my illness, that it's seeing the positive side of illness, that there is the other side of the tunnel, that you do emerge. And sometimes, it's like getting a second chance at life, and you can discover who you really are and what you really want to do in life. And that's the opportunity I feel that I've been afforded.